All right, Kat, how do I look? Am I straight?
Yeah, you look good.
And you can hear me okay? And I look like a 43-year-old man? All right.
Our
So,
skin, both your skin looks better, my skin looks better. It's already.
excellent. All right. Well, welcome to the Unnamed Podcast with Catherine Baab-Muguira and Amran
bad,
Gowani.
me,
So, yeah,
bad
we are
Muguira.
Bab-Muguira or Bob-Muguira?
Bab, Bab, like
Okay,
Bab.
let's just cut
Um,
this off. All right. Welcome to the Unnamed Podcast with Catherine Baab-Muguira and Amran Gowani. We are two middle-aged, depressive writers trying to figure it out. And so this is going to be our podcast. When we figure out what we're doing, we're going to have some nice intro music, and we'll have sponsorship from ExxonMobil and big pharmaceutical companies, making lots of money, and
Target.
it'll be very exciting. Target, obviously. And so this is our first episode. We're going to iron out the kinks as we go. I bought a microphone; it's not working. So welcome to Video Land. And so, I am an aspiring novelist trying to secure that elusive literary agent at the moment, so I can get my debut novel published with the traditional house. That's my goal. I have had 5 lives before this, and I'm sure you'll get to know me as we kind of do these episodes, like you meaning the viewer, and also Kat as well. And so, Kat, why don't you give yourself a quick introduction?
Sure. So I am a writer and a journalist on a freelance basis, and I've written for Lit Hub, Electric Lit, the Wall Street Journal, Slate, such. And my first book came out in 2021. It was called Poe for Your Problems, Uncommon Advice from History's Least Likely Self-Help Guru. I can pronounce the title of my own book for sure.
Yes, and we will put that in our show notes because we're going to be fancy. And I have read this book and I wholeheartedly endorse it. It's a lot of fun. It's not too taxing of a read for people that don't really like to dig into big tomes. It's a pretty fun and fast-paced read, and you'll actually learn a lot about Edgar Allan Poe, and you'll also learn, how to basically be more of a jerk and make it work for yourself.
Exactly,
and,
exactly.
and so this project, and I'm sure we'll talk about the genesis as we get into our episodes and kind of figure out what we're doing here. But the genesis of this really comes from Kat and I kind of becoming friends over time via Substack. At first, I was just basically a reply guy in her comments. And then I think she kind of charity subscribed to my Substack newsletter, and she's like, oh, wow, this guy's pretty funny. And so then we kind of got to know each other that way. We were Twitter friends for a while until Twitter blew itself up. And then we became text message friends. And then we basically said, we got to take our whatever insight we can offer to the world, whatever marketing skills, MBA skills that we can bring to the table, and do something that's going to break us out of our shell. And so that's why we're talking to each other right here and filming this for people to watch. And so what I wanted to do is I want to give the floor to Kat, because she is the platform expert. She's the one that shook me to my core and convinced me I had to just get on camera, even though my face looks like this. So Kat, why don't you kind of like let the viewer know like what this is all about, and then I'll obviously chime in where appropriate.
Yeah. Okay. So I think the first thing about these episodes or whatever we're doing here is we would be having these conversations anyway, talking shop, talking about our neuroses, talking about failure, talking about, the hard side of all of this, how hard it is to hang in through a lot of rejection, how hard it is to build an author platform. It's something I've struggled with for years. Absolutely. Even though like now I teach classes on it, but it's still one of those things that you're always constantly working on. And I don't have a huge platform yet. I was able to sell a book, so it's not tiny. But anyway, yeah, that's exactly what we're doing. We're trying to hustle on video, and we are probably the last people onto this train, but doesn't that mean like we're still on the train? So
Yeah,
that's what I'm hoping is the case.
We still got on the train. That's the key. And I think one thing that we're doing right here, is because I never had social media, basically never. So I got an MBA starting in 2010. And so when I went into my MBA program starting in 2010, and I knew I was going off into a corporate environment, I was like, I'm only going to get myself in trouble on social media. So I didn't have any. I never got Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
I had deleted my Facebook. I had a LinkedIn, which is just, the most sterile, lamest possible platform imaginable. And so I was way behind. So like when I had my midlife crisis and declared myself a writer, then like I was too late, right? And so I think what we're doing right here is we missed the TikTok fad in 2020, But I think what we're doing is, and you should be viewing this, the viewers should be seeing this on YouTube eventually. YouTube is kind of the quiet platform. It's the quiet social media network that I think is so big, but people don't think about it. When you say social media, people think Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and they don't think YouTube. But I think YouTube is probably it's not even a sleeping giant because it's the rampaging giant, but it's the one that's in the background that people don't think about. And so that's what we're trying to do, is for once get ahead of the curve, right? And so Kat, like, why don't you talk about, you had a platform that was good enough for you to sell a nonfiction book proposal, but you also had a kind of a secret hack there. And so why don't you talk about the platforms that you did have and why you think what we're doing now is maybe going to be a better shot on goal for us?
Yeah, all right. So I think this is an interesting point. When I sold my book in 2019, that's when I actually signed my deal. At the time, I had a couple thousand Twitter followers, essentially a couple hundred Facebook friends of people I actually know. I didn't have Instagram at all. I'd never messed with it. I'm actually like not a visual person. And I didn't have a YouTube channel or anything like that. So in terms of the social media side of things, it was very scant. And that was a problem. Like the proposal, I had a pretty easy time getting an agent. And then we were having a hard time selling the actual proposal to one of the big five. And what I did was I leaned into, so my book is about Edgar Allan Poe, and I leaned into his platform, talking about how he has 4 million Facebook fans, more Facebook fans than Danielle Steele or James Patterson, how he's this huge presence in France. He's got fans all over the world, and often they congregate in these dedicated online groups, and there are 4 Poe museums on the East Coast. Anyway, his platform gave me a lot of material to talk about. And in a lot of ways, I've used that platform too to try and sell my book. Like since it came out in 2021, I'm going to be real frank about the sales side of this and so on too, because I think it goes to the crux of the problem. So my book came out in 2021 and it sold more in the first year, like 5,000 plus, than 98% of traditionally published books do sell, depending on the statistics that you have in front of you. Like these are a little bit dubious, but we'll just use that number for right now. And then in our year 2, so now my sales are like circa 11,000, so it's a delayed number. Anyway, all right, so it's better than like most of the books out there. But the sales performance has been better than most books. And yet, like you hit that, but if it's not a bestseller, like it doesn't make a list, it doesn't sell 50,000 copies, then, publishing is a hits business. Even beating the odds to like a great extent doesn't mean that anyone's screaming for your second book. And it's made me think that despite all the like hustling I did and all the like talks at museums and colleges and so many in churches and everywhere, I hustled on this thing and I still got, a result that is modest. So anyway, my thought here is just like, I got to figure out how to scale. I've got to get onto, I'm going to sound ancient saying this, but like I've got to develop more of an internet presence and do it. Like there's really no option anymore. So that's the long-winded explanation.
No, that's the explanation that we need, because so just to your point, I think you're still pitching the piece, or you're writing the piece that's been accepted, and you're writing the piece about kind of your how you kind of grinded and hustled to get your book past that magical earn-out phase. And when I looked at the piece with you when you were drafting, and I kind of described it as small ball, like you played small ball, right? And for the baseball knowers out there, so it's like, you get a single, you bunt the guy to second base, you hit a pop fly to get to third, and then you score 1 run. Meanwhile, the other authors are out there that are doing book talk and all those things. They're hitting grand slams. They're hitting grand slams
exactly.
every inning, and you're playing small ball, and they're out earning you, even though your book probably had immense sales potential. And so I think this is just,
by factors of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, yeah, like not a modest margin, a humongous one, totally. Like you're saying.
Yeah, for sure. And it's a really fascinating problem. And so I have the benefit of your knowledge, because I've been following your Substack newsletter, which we'll link in our show notes. But Kat talks about all these exercises that you can do, all these little tools you can use, these little hacks you can try to kind of like get your stuff sold. but I think maybe you learn the hard way. I don't want to speak for you, but maybe you learn the hard way that like that small ball is not really effective or as effective as you want it to be in the home run hitting era, if you will.
Yeah, and the terrible thing about this too is that I knew this going in, but I stayed in my comfort zone. Like, so in my corporate job in 2010, I started learning, like we were using email newsletters to sell products, or we had videos that were essentially, it's the same text, it's just put into like a video slideshow and with a little bit of upbeat delivery. So in 2010, we started seeing that so many more people would watch a video than would read text. Like our marketing results doubled and tripled. And then in 2012, we saw the same thing happening again. As every other media outlet was pivoting to video, you saw that many more people will watch a video than will read an article. It's an orders of magnitude difference. So I have known this for so long. And then I have a friend has an awesome YouTube channel, and millions and millions of downloads and viewers and subscribers and so on, who told me all this like the year my book came out. He was like, you've got to scale, you got to like increase the ROI on your time, because like you, Amran, I have a kid and a job. So anyway, I guess like part of like my reluctance with this is almost like I waited too long, and I know that, but I'm not going to let that stop me now. I don't want it to stop us. You know what I mean?
No, for sure. And so, just for the people that have no idea who we are and why we're, like, why should you listen to us? I mean, we're just kind of figuring it out ourselves. And so, the difference that I have is basically I kind of became a full-time writer about 5 years ago, but I was only really seriously had an online presence starting 2 years ago. So for me, I'm like a lot earlier in my kind of, publishing journey, quote unquote, like on my trajectory. And so, I've looked at like what's Kat's done, and I'm like, okay, she's got a formula that works for her. But again, playing small ball in the home run era is not necessarily like the tactics that we want to use. And so what I like about Kat is that you're open-minded and you're willing to try new things. And I thought, like, here's a person that's like, she's going to go for it, even though she feels behind the curve. Whereas like, I'm also behind the curve just because, I'm in middle age and I've never been published anywhere. I'm trying to get my first book out there, but we can kind of just join forces and kind of figure out as we go together, right? And kind of bring our unique skills to the table and see if we can kind of get this going. Obviously, just for the listeners at home, somebody's doing landscaping, because in November in Chicago it's the perfect time to do landscaping. So that's always fun. So good first episode audio we got going here. But
at least like cinema veritas, what do you call it?
Yeah, exactly.
You can probably hear my dryer.
Yeah, I mean, this is just, I promise anybody that's still with us, we're going to get better. Just give us time.
This is us like cracking our knuckles on video.
Yeah, totally. So one other question on this kind of platform idea that I think is interesting is, we're doing a quote unquote podcast, and I think podcasts have evolved quite a bit. The first podcast kind of came out in probably the mid noughties, and then for my money, I think audio podcasts probably saturated around like the mid 2010s. And so but podcasts are obviously super popular. And so I guess, one of the things I think would be interesting for you to talk to the listeners, viewers about is like, why do you think a video podcast is more powerful than an audio podcast? Like, why aren't we just, recording in a studio and then uploading it to Apple Podcasts or Spotify podcasts? Like, what do you think's the advantage of getting on camera these days?
That's a really interesting point. I mean, obviously you're doubling the amount of mediums that you're going to be using and increasing your viewership naturally just that way. But I also think it is now imperative, like we don't have an option. We have to get used to video. So we're going to learn. And otherwise we can't advance in our careers. I think it's like that plain. I really do think it's a survival thing. Even though I don't like that fact, we just have to move on in spite of it. Also, like we have, like I'm saying, when I saw this internal business intelligence telling us that video was 10x more effective than text, like I think that's going to carry through, and that we'll like have some kind of, hopefully over time, some kind of YouTube audience for this, as well as the audio. So if you can be in two places at once, why not? Plus we need to like gain the skill set of it.
Yeah, for sure. I think, I'm sure I'll give people my sob story of childhood eventually over and over again. It's a joke that I like to revisit all the time. But like, I'm not a writer that was like, I always wanted to be a writer. I never like, I still don't have a dream of being a published author. I want to be a published author because I think I'm a good writer. And this is actually, I think, the
Mhm.
skill that I'm meant to do, quote unquote. To the extent that anyone has like really preternatural ability to do something, I do think I'm a pretty good writer. I think
Mhm.
that's something that I've always done, even in jobs that weren't writing jobs. And so it's something I've always enjoyed. But all that said, I think what I always really liked when I was little is I didn't want to be a movie star. That's a little too cheesy, but I always liked film. I kind of always like wanted to go to
Mhm.
film school or like be a director or something. And so for me, this is actually like kind of fun, even though I never thought I would do it. And I definitely, in like a youth obsessed America, I definitely like I'm way too late to the game to do anything like that. But I kind of still feel like video is something that could be fun too, right? I
It's
think
not it's not literary, but it's creative.
yeah, it's very creative. And like I think as much as I love to read, I mean I read all day long, but like my favorite thing to consume is a movie. Like I just love
Oh,
that.
okay.
I love movies. And because it's the combination of the good storytelling with the visual creativity, right? And so, I
Mhm.
think when I think about like what we're doing on I think what I guess what I'm trying to say is like I like the concept of video, even though I haven't tried it yet. And I think it's going to be a
Mhm.
fun experiment and something we can get better at. But I also feel like just relative to the platform idea, it's almost like you can't just like I've been writing a Substack newsletter. Like, let me back up for a little bit. I've been writing a Substack
Yeah.
newsletter for like almost 2 years, and
Mhm.
I've like I've more than quintupled my audience. I got a lot more eyeballs on my work than ever before. The people that actually subscribe and read my stuff is still stuns me. I'm like, well, these
Mhm.
people are like legitimately good writers. Like, why are they doing reading my crap? And so that's always like that's really gratifying. Feel like okay, the work is clicking with people, and
Mhm.
even still, like the monetizability is essentially zero, which I'll be talking about in another show in the near future. Um, the and then the scalability is effectively zero. I mean, Substack
Mhm.
has this built-in recommendation feature, and I have 32 publications recommending me as of today,
Wow.
which is a lot. And they send me
Yeah.
a lot of subs, but then I write like unhinged madness, so then people just unsubscribe, and then and why do they unsubscribe? Right? It's like I might write some like really piece of like sharp political satire, and it's like
Uh-huh.
if I was talking about the piece and why I thought of the piece and explaining to like the quote reader that's actually the
Uh-huh.
viewer, like, hey, here's how I thought about this, and here's my face, and I'm a real person with a real name, and I'm not just a guy who's empty words on a page. I really think
Mhm.
that's what people are looking for. Like I described this in one of my recent posts to the subscribers that I do have, is that like I need to be somebody who's more than just the words. I need to be the person
Yes.
behind the words. And it's like, and I
Yeah.
think that's like what the modern author has to be, whether they like it or not. I know I talk to many authors, immensely talented people, and they're just like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be on camera. Like, why do I have to be on camera if I'm a writer? It has nothing to do with writing. Well, that's just the media ecosystem we're in, right? I mean, like
You're
everybody's
not
got,
wrong.
I'm filming it on my phone, and I am not like a super tech savvy guy, and I don't even have the hottest device or anything. But it's like I was able to basically turn my camera around, buy a couple things online, and I'm filming
Mhm.
myself. And this is going to be on YouTube. So it's like the barrier to entry is so low. It's like if you're not willing to play the game, then you're automatically going to lose. Like the author that's going to film themselves, become a personality in addition to the work, is just going to get ahead. It's just really that simple.
I think that's true. And also, like, it is a skill set that's going to apply all over the place. Like, when you're doing interviews to promote your book when it comes out, all of that. It was something I realized too when I was thinking about us having this conversation. Like, since 2021, when my book came out, I have done probably 40 podcasts, reappearing on one show quite a few, like 5 or 6 times, but probably dozens of podcast interviews. And often now they're all recorded on video, which has
Mm-hmm.
made me, it makes me ambivalent about doing them because like video makes me self-conscious, and I'm ambivalent about my appearance as much as any woman in America in 2023. But I'm giving it away. Not that I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I've got so much clout that it's that valuable. I'm just saying that I'm not taking the means of distribution into my own hands, which we all know now is something we absolutely have to do. Like, you have to have a way to reach your audience. You have to have to develop, like what you're talking about with your Substack is finding your audience. And even if it's sometimes shrinks by 10 subs here or there because you had sharp political satire. I think maybe it's wetting the stone for the people who already really like your work, and hopefully we'll start to attract those people who like the same sort of thing, and see what you're doing. But I also agree with you, like warming it up, attaching a face and a worldview to it. Like Lee Stein said the other day in her newsletter, which I think is so good, it's called Attention Economy. She's like, use a real picture on your social media platforms, in your email, and so on. And I mean, that's just a tiny little baby step, but it's the same kind of thing. You need to give people a voice, a face, and a worldview to attach to your writing, to brand yourself a little bit, I guess. Is that what we're saying?
I mean, basically, yeah. And it's funny you mentioned that because like when I first did my Substack, I actually paid an artist to make a nice like a avatar for me. And it's really cool looking, but I realized over time that it creates like an emotional and psychological distance for the reader, because it's like they're just looking at a picture of a person, like, and not to like be funny, but in the AI era, it's like, well, is that even a real person then, or did somebody just make a picture and then did have AI generate the text, right? And so, like, this is my face, I'm just as disappointed about it as you are watching this. But this is me. This is who I am, and I'm a real person, and I feel like you have to like to Lee's point, like I changed and just put a picture of myself, which I was kind of averse to because I'm like, well, I don't really want to have, a digital footprint because I didn't have any social media. And it's like, but eventually, like, you can pound your head against the wall as much as you want. It's not going to work. The quote unquote market is going to do what the market does. And you could either get in the market or you can be outside of the market and just, piss off. And so I was like, okay, I got to have a picture of myself. And it's like, I've taken the baby steps, but I think, a conversation that we had just via text message a couple months ago just really rattled me, where I was just like, not only do we have to put our toes in, like we just have to jump in. We just have to jump in and do it, because this is like where the market is. Like another thing that I saw recently, Jason Pargin, who writes the John Dies at the End book series. He has a popular Substack newsletter. And so he, maybe if we get lucky, we'll get him on the show here. But he basically had a post just 2 weeks ago, and we'll put it in our show notes. But he had a post like maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago where he said, he's got this popular book series. He sells a lot of books. I mean, he ostensibly makes a living on these books. And he basically took a year just to master TikTok. And the point of it, he said, was I just needed to do this so that I can keep writing books. Like, I don't want to do this. I'm not good at this. I don't feel comfortable doing this. But the dude I think he has like 500,000 TikTok followers or something, like something mental. Like he just went supernova.
Good for him, man.
But now he's just going to use that as his platform, quote unquote, to sell his books, right? Because he's got a Substack newsletter with 7,000 people, which sounds like a lot until you have 500,000 TikTok followers, right? So you talk about scale. You're talking about scale.
Yeah, and I mean that 500,000 TikTok followers are going to sell your books for you. I think he's absolutely right. I mean, you and I both have business backgrounds, worked in the corporate world, worked in marketing, and so on too. So I've ignored this as long as possible. I see the sales potential in the one realm text only as so tiny as to be not really worth pursuing as much as I love it, and B, necessarily so limited that I don't think you will continually struggle to get book deals if you can get them, period. Whereas if you start to figure out this other piece, as much as you may hate it, I'm talking to myself right now. Yes, you're going to give yourself the possibility to write the novel that I'm working on. I want to write this story so badly. I have something like I really want to put across with it. I love my premise, but it's never going to see the light of day unless I start to do things like this. I mean, I know you're kind of in the same boat too. I guess it's like the whole topic of this episode.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for me, I think one of the fun things that obviously people are going to realize, and we're going to realize about ourselves as we talk more and more, is that we're kind of like a little bit opposite ends of the spectrum, right? Like I think you would just describe yourself as a little bit more shy and a little more introverted. And I'm like definitely like a loud, brash extrovert. And so like for me, like I definitely want to use these tools to help me kind of get that agent, go to the publishing house. It's interesting, like early in the game, like if I got a TikTok tomorrow, which I don't have one, but I probably will get one. But if I got a TikTok tomorrow and I had 13 followers, that actually might hurt me more than it would help me, right?
Yes.
But at the same time, building these skills like is showing like in the best case scenario, I get my agent, we go to the big publishing house, we sell my book, and then we're going to do publicity. And if I can learn how to be on a late night talk show talking about my book by doing this with you, that can only help me, right? Like this is we're talking like best case scenario, but like I want like my book is about Wall Street and corruption in corporate America and insider trading and the perils of unchecked capitalism. I want to talk about that stuff, man. I want to talk about that stuff on television.
Hell yeah.
So like I want to dunk on shit that I've seen in the corporate world. And like so, and I want people to hear about it because I think it's meaningful. And I think I have something important to say about it. And like the reality is like I wrote this book that is people that beta read it that think it's really good. And the reality is even if it's a home run book, it might sell 20,000 copies. If I got on, you know, Jimmy Fallon, you're in front of 3 to 4 million people at least. And so the scalability, like we're talking about, like, and I'm not having delusions of grandeur here. I'm just talking like pure.
No,
math.
I hear you.
You know, like it's like you plan for success, you plan for the best case outcome. Like you might have like big time opportunities, and if you're not prepared to take advantage of them, then that's not going to help you.
I did some local television, like literally a noon talk show on a local news channel, like Channel 6 News in Richmond. And we saw a spike in sales that day. And that's an audience of, it can't be more than 100,000 people. But I was there talking about my book, being interviewed, and I'm not that smooth. Like if you look closely, my hands are kind of doing this because I'm self-conscious. But anyway, at that level, that you know, shot sales up at least by a couple 100% that particular day. You know, the Amazon sales rate changed from like 75,000 down to 10,000. So anyway, what I'm saying is like, you can get to sub Jimmy Fallon level and still have outrageous success compared to what would be the case without that like TV or video or whatever presence.
For sure, man. So yeah, I mean that you know, this is the kind of stuff that we hope to talk about, you know, in these conversations, that whatever we're going to end up calling them, you know, whether it's a video podcast or a YouTube show or whatever however we classify it, these are the kind of things we hope to talk about. This is kind of why we're doing this. And so I think, you know, this is a good first episode and probably a good stopping point, I think, unless you had something else to add about kind of platform and video. But I think this is the kind of stuff that we hope to engage in. And if we can get this show working and kind of like get our technology kinks ironed out, kind of get comfortable, get consistent, do all the things that you need to do to make any kind of product really nice and smooth, then, you know, hopefully we're going to be doing these kind of conversations on a, you know, kind of bi or tri-weekly basis. Maybe we'll get some other creators in here, have some different conversations about how they use technology, how they use platform, what kind of video presence they have. If they don't have a video presence, maybe what God forbid we might be able to teach them. I mean, who knows, you know?
Or even like what's working for them that they can share with us and with everybody listening.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so I think let's stop here for now, and like let's before we, you know, fall off a cliff and really screw the episode up. And so I think what we want to do at the end of every episode is tell us one thing you're reading or watching, and then plug one thing, and then I'll go after you.
Okay, I'm reading Dr. Sleep, which most people will know as the sequel to The Shining. I just read The Shining before that, and I've read that book like 6 times. I want to make the case somewhere for The Shining being great literature. I think it's one of the greatest novels of the 20th century. Like it should be in the top 100. The metaphors that he works in so naturally remind me of like Melville or Poe, or certainly in the popularity and his comfort with commercial work, like a Dickens of our time. So anyway, making the case for Dr. Sleep, I'm like 20% in right now. I can't say if it's amazing or not. And what I'm watching, okay, so I'm like rewatching The Office yet again. It's my comfort watch, and I just leave it on when I'm doing stuff around my apartment and I hear the voices, and it's just, I don't know, it's like a nice comforting thing to have in the background.
Very good. And plug, what do you got to plug?
Oh, my Substack series. I'm interviewing writers about their debuts right now, like how they broke through, how they got an agent, how they got a publishing deal, what they've experienced with it so far. And I think these are really interesting because they give us examples of how it gets done, but also you hear like the dirt. how hard it is, the hoops they had to jump through, how long they tried. Like, I interviewed Holly James, the romance novelist, a couple of weeks ago, and she was saying she got rejected 132 times before she found her agent. Okay, that cheers me up immensely because Holly's great. It eventually worked out for her, and maybe 133 times later, we'll hit where we want to hit.
For sure, and definitely, and like I said, we'll get show link in the show notes. We'll have a link for that. But I've been reading that series. I've read every post on Kat's Substack, Poke and Save Your Life. It's really, really fun. You can learn a lot. It's all free to access, and so we'll put a link to that. You guys should definitely check that out and subscribe. So I am a notoriously slow reader. I feel really bad I am a bad literary citizen. I write a lot. My output is good, but my reading is really slow. And so, but I'm a good literary citizen because I buy a lot of books. So I might not read your book, but I definitely bought it. And so right now I'm reading on recommendation from you. I'm reading Lee Stein's Self-Care. I blew through the first, couple, say 25, 30 pages. It definitely has a kind of tone. It's a lot of fun. It kind of like a kind of, silly corporate setting with these ridiculous people, which is a lot of the style that I write. So I actually use Lee's book as a comparable in my query letter. And watching, I'm a bad reader, and I give myself a pass because I don't really watch that much stuff. So I'm not binge watching TV and saying I don't have time to read. I just don't have time to do anything because my kids are killing me and I'm old. And so, but my wife
it
watches.
Hurts.
Yeah, it really is. And my wife watches a lot. I'm a big sports fan, so I'm kind of like just finished watching the Rugby World Cup, which is kind of an esoteric sport that I follow, but definitely was a lot of fun. The tournament just ended. I'll be following the end of the college football and NFL season, and my wife and I are big basketball fans, so we are League Pass. We are a League Pass household. Every night is League Pass night, even in October. So we're having a lot of fun with that. And so yeah, and plug. I guess hopefully one day I'll have a book to plug here. For now, I'll plug my Substack newsletter. It's called Field Research, and I'll put a link in the show notes. It's a satire and humor newsletter. It kind of mixes up a bunch of different things. Sometimes it's political satire. Sometimes it's just cultural commentary and satire. Sometimes it's kind of SNL style sketch comedy. Sometimes it's just, the real talk on parenting in a very kind of creative format. So it's a lot of fun. Kat's been a big supporter of me. She's one of the kind of the first people that endorsed me and kind of put me on the map a little bit with Substack. So that's that. I've got 5 posts planned the rest of the year, and they should all be, as insane as expected. So that's it. So that's episode 1 in the books. Thank you, Kat. We will get hopefully better audio next time. My microphone betrayed me. I will try to get it working next time. And
we did it. We did it.
We did it. We're famous now, right? We did it, right? Like the agents are going to call me now, right? Is this how this works?
Done. I think your phone's ringing right now.
I think it is. So I think what we'll try to do is we'll put this on YouTube. Kat will have her own YouTube channel to start. I will have my own YouTube channel to start. You'll be able to see the video on both places, and will really help us out and help you out if you find this conversation interesting, is to subscribe to both, because Kat will have her own unique content to go alongside this podcast series. I will have my own unique content to go along this podcast series. I'm all in on video, man. I've already got comedy ideas that'll be coming to my YouTube channel. So please subscribe to both. We'll put links to everything in the show notes. Anything else, Kat?
No, I'm so happy about this. I feel like it's the step we've been meaning to take for like a dozen years. So
yes, a dozen years. That was really only 6 months, but felt like a dozen years. But we're here, and I've officially declared we are famous. So with that, we're signing off.
Right. Bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Dude, I can say I actually enjoyed that more than I enjoy writing, unless it's going really well.
Yeah. Okay. I'm stopping the recording.